the non-conscious and conscious mind.
In this section, we're going to talk about the conscious and the non-conscious mind. I'd like to share a story with you about a baby elephant. When an elephant's a baby, its trainer takes a clamp and puts it around its leg, and then takes a stake and hammers the stake in the ground, keeping the elephant in place. Every time the elephant tries to move, the clamp and the stake keep it in its place. And through repetition, this elephant learns that it cannot move the stake in the ground. It happens so diligently that when the elephant's an adult, they just put a tiny little rope around the elephant's leg and take a tiny little stick and put the stick in the ground and the elephant won't move. Because at a non-conscious level, it believes that if it moves, it'll hurt itself. You and I are controlled by our non-conscious mind. Even though we think we have conscious control, the majority of our decisions, the majority of our behavior, and especially the majority of our results are controlled by our non-conscious mind. This section will teach you how to take control of your non-conscious mind and break free forever. So we're going to get into the real power center of you. And it's important that you understand that this information may seem complex at times, but it's critical for you to understand that the information that we were taught when we were in school, when we were younger, is pretty inaccurate. We were taught to believe that our conscious mind controlled everything, and what we have found to be true today is that it absolutely is responsible for very, very little of our actual perceptions and our day-to-day behaviors. And so I'm interested in helping you understand how to achieve long-term, measurable, and significant results, especially financially. And so we're going to talk about the non-conscious side of your mind, the non-conscious side of your brain, so that you really have an understanding of what it's going to take for you to rewire your brain at the level of where the power is. Now let's think about this for a moment. Your brain, let's say 100% mass of molecules, 83% of your brain's mass, just its size, its sheer size, is devoted to all of the non-conscious functions that happen every single day, every single moment in yours and my life. However, that 83% controls about 96 to 98% of all of your perceptions and behavior. And what that means is this: you are not aware for the most part of what's really going on. We're working off of memory for the most part, as well as our habits and conditioned mind. We do everything the same way almost day in and day out. Our non-conscious neurons travel at over 100,000 miles per hour compared to our conscious neurons, which only travel at about 125 miles per hour. That means that the signals that are being passed back and forth between neurons are much faster at the non-conscious level. As a matter of fact, there are between 10 billion and 400 billion transactions or chemical reactions going on at any given second at the non-conscious level. Whereas your conscious mind, there's only about 2 to 2,000 transactions or chemical reactions going on. Your non-conscious mind can't tell the difference between a truth or a lie. All it knows how to do is take whatever you impress upon it and act upon it. The beautiful thing about your non-conscious mind is it's at your service. It's at your beck and call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It never shuts down. It never rests. It has three major functions. Number one is it's your personal operating system. And what do I mean by that? As you are listening to this or as you are watching this DVD or CD, here's what's happening. Right now, 2 gallons of blood are being pumped through your system every minute. One of your blood cells is traveling through 65,000 to 100,000 miles of blood vessels without you thinking about it. Your heartbeat is pumping blood faster than you can imagine, as well as every second, 10 million cells die in your body, and then bleep, 1 second later, 10 million more are reborn. Your non-conscious cannot tell real from imagined. You could be looking at a picture of Snoopy, you could be imagining Snoopy, or Snoopy could be right there in front of you, and your non-conscious mind cannot tell the difference between those three things. And why is that important? Well, that's important because we could start to play tricks with our non-conscious mind by reconditioning it to believe that certain things are true that maybe really aren't true right now. The other thing to keep in mind is that your non-conscious mind is where all of your habits and all of your beliefs are stored. And one of the things we know is that Habits are 10,000 times more powerful than desires. So you can have a conscious desire to make more money. You can have a conscious desire to increase your company's revenues, but unless you impress it into the power center of your being, your non-conscious mind, nothing will happen. And that's the reason that setting goals is an absolute waste of time unless you impress it into the power center of your mind, the party that controls 95 to 98% of all of your behaviors and all of your actions. What I want you to understand is your non-conscious mind is the most powerful piece of equipment that is known to man. It searches for images and patterns in what we call the outside world that match up with the habits and beliefs of our internal mind. And if you recall earlier, we talked about how we get about 10 to 11 million pieces of information that come at us from all the different senses, but over 9 million to 10 million are dropped from our sensory acuity because it doesn't match up with our internal map. And so we need to become outstanding at developing the habits and beliefs that will force our brain to find in the real world, as we call it, a match for what's inside in here. And that is the most potent piece of information on how the non-conscious mind works. We have to become outstanding at reprogramming and rewiring our brains for success, reprogramming our brains for achieving more income, and that's what we're going to do. Part of our gift is to be able to consciously choose any thought or idea. We can use our imagination, one of our intellectual conscious functions, and choose anything we want. But here's where most people make a mistake. They think that by consciously choosing about it, it must happen. But as we will learn, as we talked about earlier, unless it's impressed into the power center, the non-conscious, which is really the control center, nothing will ever really materialize. Nothing will ever materialize. So our job is to choose any idea from the world of possibilities or from the universe of possibilities and impress it into the non-conscious side of our being, which then creates automatic perceptions and behaviors, which yields the results we want. And I'll explain this to you a little bit deeper, but the creative process, if you think of anything material, anything you want to think about, your clothes, your hat, your pen, your boots, my slacks, the chairs, this hotel, came from somebody first thinking about it, getting emotionally involved with it, and then producing the results. But most of us are playing on the conscious level and not taking the time to impress it into the power center, and we're wondering why we're not creating or manifesting things in our life. We haven't taken the cycle all the way through the creative process. And again, as you read your manual, as you see the stuff that we're working on, when you start to impress it into that power center, it's unbelievable what happens.
Your reticular activation system and psychocybernetic mechanism.
So, we've just gone through pages 26 and 27 in your manual, and we're going to start talking about the reticular activation system, and you are going to be blown away by its power. I hope that you're following this in your manual because it's really a self-study guide, a home self-study guide that you can use. And so make sure that you read everything in the manual that will really tie all of this in together for you. The other thing that we need to chat about and really understand and reflect upon is the non-conscious side of you is really what is your infinite intelligence. You are connected to the source of all supply through this non-conscious side of you. It is what created you. It is what took the egg and the sperm and created you from just a DNA. And so keep in mind that we are no more separate from the infinite intelligence in the universe than a fish is separate from water. It is the exact same thing that connected the entire universe together. You and I are a part of that. We are not separate from each other. We are not separate from the infinite source of supply that created us. What I'd like to suggest is this: if we took a bucket of water out of the ocean and took it 1,000 miles inland, what we'd have is a bucket of ocean water, still the same substance that it came from. That's what our non-conscious mind is. It's that substance that we have come from. And with that, let's turn to page 28 and talk about the reticular activation system. This system is one of the most powerful pieces of equipment we have neurologically to use to achieve success in our life. Let me explain it to you and you'll understand the importance of this. If you went in through the eye sockets to the back of the brain and went down below the occipital lobe, there's a network-like group of cells, brain cells, that are called the reticular activation cells. And every single impulse that comes into our consciousness gets passed through these reticular activation cells before it goes anywhere else. And they are responsible for finding in our physical world anything that's on our important list. They work like a Google search engine. Once you have something put up onto your important list, your reticular activation system will work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to find this information for you so that you can achieve the level of success that you want. Let me give you an example of how this works. Let's say that you're working on some kind of a big deal, or you're looking to make more money in your career, and somebody 20 or 30 feet away from you is talking about something that could help you move that goal closer to your reality. Your non-conscious mind will send a signal to your conscious mind to stop whatever you're doing and to go and talk to that person. Now, these are the cells that we talked about a little bit earlier that work at over 100,000 miles per hour compared to our conscious cells. Another example is if, let's say, you're responsible for taking care of a child and you're in one room and the child falls in another room and starts to cry. These cells will give you a signal, will send you a signal from the non-conscious mind to your conscious mind to run into that room as fast as possible to pay attention to what's on your important list. If you want to understand a bit about how this works, if you remember back in the 60s when people were doing LSD, sensory impulses that were coming in from, let's say, the sound area were being sent up to the processing area for eyesight, and that's why people were hallucinating. Every sensory impulse that comes in from the outside world into our consciousness first goes to the reticular activation cell area and then redirected to our consciousness only and only if it is absolutely a priority for us. So we need to learn how to upload the things that are really critical and important to us to this part of our psyche. Now, here's what happens in reverse of this. If there's something that you're focusing on, like lack of money or lack of prosperity, guess what you are actually telling your reticular activation system to find for you? Absolutely more of the same. And that's why we need to really emphasize that we have to control this part of our psyche, and we have to control this part of our brain. So I'll share with you a couple of ways that it works to make sense. Have any of you bought a car, and then right after you bought the car, you noticed every single car just like yours no matter what color? That's the reticular activation system. Ladies, if you've been pregnant, do you notice pregnant women more often? Yeah. Gentlemen, if your spouses have been pregnant, do you notice pregnant women everywhere? Yeah. If you are looking for a parking spot in a garage, and you tell yourself, I want to look for a parking spot, I need a parking spot, your reticular activation system scans the entire parking lot before you can do it consciously and finds the little exhaust that just went on in a car 200 yards away. It sees somebody walking in the top of their head that you would never have picked up consciously. It's like a personal Google search engine that works 24/7. Now, to make sure that your reticular activation system is working properly, we need you to turn to page number 29, and let's talk about the psychocybernetic mechanisms, because these two systems work hand in hand with each other. The reticular activation system serves one purpose, the psychocybernetic serves another. And here's how your psychocybernetic mechanism works. First, let's understand what a cybernetic mechanism is. A cybernetic mechanism is simply a control and response mechanism that occurs in animals and some machines. So if you're in your car right now and you have a heating system and you set the thermostat to a certain temperature, any deviation from that set temperature will send a signal for the heat or the air to be turned on. The very same thing happens in your home with your thermostat there. Let's say that you have your thermostat set at 70 degrees because that's your comfort zone. That's what gives you homeostasis. And let's say the cold air comes into your house. The sensors on your thermostat will pick up a deviation from the set temperature, send a message through the electrical system to the furnace to kick up the heat so that the temperature rises to 70 degrees. That's called a cybernetic mechanism. Well, guess what? You and I have something called a psychocybernetic mechanism that works the exact same way. We actually devised all other cybernetic mechanisms to match our own psychocybernetic mechanism. And so let's say you're used to earning $50,000 or $30,000 or $100,000 a year. And you say, you know what, my new goal is to earn double that this year. And you set off working as hard as you can to make that a reality. You want to double your company's revenues, or you want to double your own income, it really doesn't matter. Any deviation from what your current comfort zone is will trip up the mechanisms in your brain and send neurotransmitters causing you to have doubt, fear, and anxiety, and cause you to stop doing what you were doing that was getting you the results that you wanted. Now, this happens automatically through the nervous system, and it happens so fast you're not even aware of it. What it causes you to do is it causes you to start rationalizing why your old behavior is good enough. You start to rationalize, which means you tell yourself rational lies about why the old behavior and the old image in your mind must stay there. Now, this is the downfall of behavior modification programs. They work by using persistence and willpower, but they're not taking into account this psychocybernetic mechanism that its only job is to keep you at your current level of comfort. You could be absolutely miserable, but you will be comfortable at your current income or your current relationship or your current living conditions. This part must be retrained if you want to achieve success. You must reset the calibration here of these neural thermostats that cause you to behave in certain ways day in and day out, cause you to perceive everything that you need to that line up or match up with your current income or your current company revenue. This is a critical point, so I want you to take the time to really understand this. Without resetting this, nothing will change. This is the key right here. I hope right now I've got your curiosity up as to how to reset the reticular activation system and your psychocybernetic mechanism. And in order to do that, let's assume something. Let's assume that you have a 5-year-old child that's about to go to kindergarten and you don't know how these systems work, but I do. And so here's what I would do with my child before we went to kindergarten. I would drive them right over to the kindergarten and show them inside the kindergarten window what it's like to be in the kindergarten. Show them how much fun they're going to have. Show them the games they're going to play. I would get them to mentally practice everything they're going to do in kindergarten, say a week or 2 from now. I would also start telling them all of the stories that I had about the fun I had at kindergarten. I would start to condition their mind before we went to kindergarten so that we would recalibrate this mental thermostat. Let's say you didn't do any of that and your child didn't have any cells of recognition or references in their mind for how wonderful kindergarten can be. If we walked up a staircase and we had our kids with us, your child would be clinging on to you for dear life because it was something new to them, something different, something scary. My child, on the other hand, wouldn't do that because we've already conditioned the mind to play at that new level of behavior, to play at that new level of expectation. And so one of the ways that we can reset the reticular activation system and the psychocybernetic mechanism at the same time is we start to play these mental movies in our own mind that take us to the level that we want to be playing at, not the current level we're at. We always move and see ourselves in the next level of achievement, and that way we reset this one part of our brain that is critical if you want to achieve more than you're achieving right now. So right now what I'd like you to do is think about what's the next level that you want to achieve. How much money do you really want to make? And then create a mental movie of already living there, already achieving that level of success, already achieving that in your business or your professional life or career. You have to see yourself at that level of success, or else you will be kicked back by your reticular activation system and the psychocybernetic mechanism into your current level of production. This is the first key for really recalibrating this system. We'll talk more about this when we get into the neural reconditioning process, which will really get to the heart of the matter at a non-conscious level. We'll do some creative bombardment of the subconscious there that'll take care of this issue once and for all. Back in the 70s, 60s, Maxwell Maltz, a brain surgeon, was doing work with patients who he had performed plastic surgery on. And as much plastic surgery as he did on their face, some people didn't see any change when they looked in the mirror. So he was wondering what was really controlling their self-image, what was controlling that. And now we know today that once the neural connection is made, once the image is made on the inside, the outside, even if it's there, will be dropped from our visual perceptions. So let's assume that we're going deep sea fishing. And nobody's catching any fish, and we've been out for an hour. And you come up to me, and I'm the captain, and you say, John, we're not catching any fish, and we're going due north. Can you maybe, steer the boat in a different direction? And so I say, sure. So I go to the front, I take the steering wheel, and I just turn it about 20 degrees to the left. And so we start going in that direction. What happens? It goes back to where it was. Why? Not momentum build up. Think about, we have a automatic pilot that's set on due north. I physically, manually am turning the steering wheel to go 20 degrees to the left. Michael?
Just adjust it so it calibrates back to where it started.
So it calibrates back to what it's programmed to do. So I come back to the back of the boat, and you guys are getting a little mad, say, John, this is the direction we were going in. We want to catch some fish today. I say, sorry, you guys. So I go back to the front of the boat, and I turn the boat about 40 degrees now. I go, I got it, you guys. That was a lot of hard work, but I did it. I come back to the back of the boat. What happens? Calibrates back. So you know what? Hold on. So let me try harder now. So I turn the boat almost all the way around, and I come back to the back of the boat. What happens within very short order? Recalibrates. It goes back to where it's programmed to go back to. Does this story remind you of anybody you know intimately? Persistence and hard work versus reprogramming the computer. Now what I want you to do is go back to page 29 in your manual, and I want you to write out the income that you want to achieve. Now don't get caught up in what you think you can achieve. I want you to write down the income that you want to achieve. Then I want you to start visualizing you achieving it right now. I want you to visualize making that income right now. What kind of car are you driving? What kind of trips are you taking? What kind of clothes are you wearing? What kind of contributions are you making to charitable causes of your choice? I want you to live in that space. Just mentally go into that playground. Remember, the non-conscious mind doesn't know the difference between something that we imagine and something is real. And so what we want to do is we want to recalibrate this psychocybernetic mechanism by choosing the income that we want and by living in that space as if it were actually true right now. This will do two things. It'll, one, reset your psychocybernetic mechanism to be able to achieve a new income level, and B, it'll tell your reticular activation system this is important to you, and it'll help you find it faster than you can do it consciously. If you don't take this action to reset your psychocybernetic mechanism, any change in your comfort zone, being it high or low, will cause your amygdala to release neurotransmitters which will stop you cold in your tracks. It'll cause you to revert back into what Maslow said was safety, your perceived comfort zone. You don't want this to happen. This is the cause of doubt, fears, and anxieties. It's when we don't reset the calibration, we don't see ourselves in the next level of our achievement that causes this to happen.
Please pause your DVD and complete the exercises on page 29. The amygdala.
You've got this little thing, this almond-sized shaped little piece, it's the Greek word for almond, that is looking for any deviations in comfort zones. Any deviations in comfort zones. And when it sets or senses a deviation in the comfort zone, guess what it does? It releases stress hormones. Say, hey, be careful, watch out. So these are actually great signals for you. So the messages that you're getting that you're out of your comfort zone is actually very, very good. It's a great mechanism to tell you, hey, this is not what you're used to. Are you sure you want to move forward? But guess what most of us do? Revert back into what Maslow called was safety. As opposed to saying, will this decision, will this move, will this action that I want move me closer or further away from my dreams? So stop right now and do as I suggest and start the process. Remember, it's not the knowledge that's important. It's the application of the information that'll yield the results. And what this program is all about and what you're all about is achieving outstanding results, better financial results, and better results in your life total. So do the work. I'm really looking forward to hearing all the successes that you're going to achieve in your life.
Please pause your DVD and complete the exercises on page 30. List any doubts, fears, or stress that you have in your life right now. Your conscious mind.
Welcome back. I hope that you've done all of your exercises and that you really have an understanding how powerful your non-conscious mind really is. We're going to take you live to the seminar so you can really work on the conscious side of your being and understand the 6 intellectual functions. Now remember, what I want you to do is pay close attention to which category you fit into. You'll notice that you're going to be strong in 1 or 2 of the areas of your conscious mind, and that's what we'll be focusing on later on. So with that, let's take you live. We'll talk about the 6 intellectual functions of your conscious mind, and here's where this exercise is going to play out. Each one of us has about 2 of the 6
conscious intellectual functions as our strengths. We don't have all 6 as our strengths. Okay? And I'll walk you through this and explain to you what this means. We talked about being in an induced state versus being in a deductive state. Can anybody tell me what being in a deductive state means, or being deductive in one's reasoning? Deductive is when you're thinking about deducing the information. Does this make sense? If I do this, then this will happen. If I do this, then this will happen. Analytical features, basically. So just from a show of hands, how many of you are very analytical? Okay, good. Interesting. A lot of the room, so very analytical. And so you're predominantly, I would say, left brain thinkers, and we'll get into what that means, the characteristics. But all of you, even though you are in deductive, you can be put into an induced state. Now, if you recall what we did yesterday with the finger, I usually use that exercise here. So put your fingers up again, okay, and put it here on your chin. Good. Did any of you put it on your cheek again? Some did. But most of the deductive reasoning people would be thinking about it, saying, no, you did this yesterday, and so I'm not going to do it again today. Other people were just going, yeah, sure, we'll follow you. And so what we have to make sure of is that you do not allow television, the radio, news, other people induce you into not thinking about what the information is and will it move you forward or behind. The question is always, is this information going to move me towards my dreams or move me away from them? That's where we get deductive. If your deductive abilities are not that great, you will need to have people on your team if you're building companies that can take massive amounts of information and make heads or tails out of it. I always have somebody who is a brilliant deductive reasoning thinker on my team. Always, always, always. I've got good deductive reasoning. I'm about, when we show you the emergenetics, the emergenetics profiling, I'm about, a third, just about in my conceptual, social, and analytical abilities. And so, if you're one or the other, it's not good or bad. You just have to know, I have a challenge really going through complex information or making decisions. I just don't know how to make heads or tails of it, whether it's a right decision or a wrong decision. So you need to bring somebody onto your team. Will. Who's got great will here? Not willpower, but the will of life. Okay, so a few less people. So that is an absolute phenomenal aptitude. And some people have much stronger will than others, right? Our number one need is our will to live. But beyond that, we may not want to, win a race. So what? It doesn't make a difference. If you have people on your team that have great will, that's an asset to you. And so I look at everybody and see what are the characters, what are the qualities of the individual, and then how do I, and I'm going to relate this to make money, how do I build teams around me with people who complement my strengths? Does that make sense? All right. What about memory? Short-term memory, long-term memory. Who's got great memory? We all, by the way, have perfect memory. Memory is like a muscle, and there's things that you can use like mnemonics to really advance your memory. But they did a study back in London, England with bricklayers over a 10-year period of time where they had these bricklayers put these certain bricks in these buildings that had marks on them, certain characteristics or marks on them so they could remember them. And 10 years later, they brought them in and put them under hypnosis. Guess what percentage of the bricklayers remembered which building the bricks went into? 100%. 100% of the bricklayers were able to remember where certain bricks were in certain buildings that they put in buildings all over London. So we have great memories, and we have to learn how to access that. And some people have better memories than others. I tend to have a great memory, and I also, because I know the short-term memory is very, very short, I always keep a pad of paper or a recorder. I've got a recorder in my car, an automatic recorder in the car. So if I've got an idea, they say that every one of us has had at least 2 or 3 million-dollar ideas that we forget about because we didn't jot it down. How many of you has that happened to? Yeah, look around. Every single person. And so the reason for that is because of the conscious mind, short-term memory lasts about 20 seconds. And if you don't write it down or don't have a mechanism for remembering it, it just goes. It just goes. Oops. Perception. Take a look on page 33 on your book, and I'd like you to do this exercise first. Take a look at the elephant, and don't say anything yet. Okay, just take a look. I'm going to give you 10 seconds. Tell me how many legs the elephant has. Page 33, you've got 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Everybody look up at me. Okay, how many legs does the elephant have? 8. Are all you intelligent people? How many people think 5? Okay, look around, look around. How many people think 6? 7? 8? Well, we've got people who think there's 5, people who think there's 6, people think that's 7 and 8. Who's right? We see what we're conditioned to see. We see what we're conditioned. This happens to be an optical illusion, obviously, but perception is very, very limited. We don't see everything there is to see. We all have our own viewpoint of what we see. What about the old woman and the young one? Can everybody see both the young and old woman? And the only purpose for this is just to get an understanding of what your strengths are. Imagination. By the time we are about 30 years old, 95% of our creativity neurons, our creative neurons, are obsolete. Obsolete. Who's very imaginative here? Great, good. Now, intuition. Who's very intuitive here? I imagine a lot in here. Yeah, right. What is intuition? Intuition is what you know before you think. Intuition is what you know before you get into the filters and process it with all the filters that we process information with. It's what you know at this level here. Have you ever walked into a room and you know something's wrong and you say, hey, what's going on? I say, oh, nothing. Maybe it's okay. No, come on, what's wrong? And they say, nothing. You know, the dog knows something's wrong. What's wrong? Has that ever happened to anybody? That is your intuitive factor. That is you picking up the vibration. If everything is energy, which it is, then your intuitive factor is your ability to pick up on the energy that's happening all around you. But we don't learn to trust it. We don't learn to trust it. But it is one of the highest and most sensitive sets of conscious abilities that we have. But we don't trust it. One of the things that we make an error with, and the example I use, imagine that there's a person, male or female, in the corner at a party, and you're just picking up a vibe that is not to your liking, a negative vibe, we'll call it. You may make judgment once you process it, like saying, she's a snob or he's a jerk. But what might be happening in reality to them is an hour before that, their dog or cat got hit by a car. And they are processing a negative feeling and emotion, and you're picking up on that, but you're making a judgment past just the feeling. Understand? Do we all do that? That's why I suggest suspend judgment. We don't know each other's story. We don't know whether you're a jerk or the most wonderful human being on the planet. And even if you are being jerky at that time, how many of you have been jerks at one time or another in your life? And those of you who didn't raise your hand, do you want to be honest now? We all do. We all have 4,500 different traits that we are a part of. They're a part of human nature. But our intuition, my highest developed skill is my intuitive factor. I just trust it. I just know. I just absolutely have a knowing of what's going on in somebody's vibratory rate. I just know. But it's also something that I pay attention to. Remember extrasensory attention? This is not an extrasensory attention. This is part of your gift. Okay, but it's a higher faculty than your physical senses. But we've been taught since we were born to hear, see, smell, taste, and touch. So guess what we do as adults? You see that? Did you hear what he said? We've got to operate with a higher faculty of mind. Now with all this brain research coming out, we know what's going on. We know what's going on. So we have to upgrade our software, upgrade our way of thinking, upgrade the way we see the world, upgrade what we expect, upgrade our intentions using these. So how many of you can see one or two or three that you're really strong at here? How many of you can see that how many of you are great or have got all of these as like top 10? Nobody? What about 5 of them? Five of these are really highly developed for you. 5, 4, 3, 2, yeah. Somewhere 2, 3, or 4 is the average. So when you're building teams, when you're building companies, you always look to match up the areas that you need to fill in.
Please pause your DVD and complete the exercises on page 35. List when you have been creative and imaginative, and make a list of times when you are highly intuitive. Learning, beliefs, and creation.
Hi, come on in. Welcome to my theater. I think you'll agree that every great Hollywood movie has to have a great script. It gets us emotional, it gets us tied right into it because it really makes us feel everything that the movie producer wants us to feel. In this segment, we're going to talk about your beliefs and your habits, otherwise known as the scripts of your mind. It causes you to see and do and achieve everything that happens in your life. We're going to teach you everything you need to know to create a better script so your finances change and you live the life you really deserve and the life you are meant to have. Come on in and let's have some fun. Well, now we understand how your conscious mind and non-conscious mind works and what strengths you have to work with. The next part of this study program is to really understand the software that makes it all run. We're going to talk specifically about how you and I learn and how our beliefs and habits really control the entire game. And then we'll get into the next section for really manifesting what it is that we want. Now let's talk about your habits and your beliefs. How are they formed? You and I were not born with any beliefs when we were kids. Genetically, we are predisposed for about 50% of our behaviors and for 50% of our propensities. But other than that, we had to learn through our experiences, through the knowledge that our parents gave us, that our siblings gave us, that our spiritual leaders around us gave us. And whatever they put into our mind when we were very, very young became what we believed to be the truth. But we now know that it is not the truth. It is only our interpretation of the truth. If you think about it, any piece of information that is experienced over and over again and repeated over and over again becomes a belief. If we take a belief and we add more experience to that and more repetition to that, it becomes a habit. Now, we've already discussed where habits reside. They are part of your non-conscious mind. And once they are there, you behave, you act, and you perceive everything that matches up with that belief and habit. What happens at the non-conscious level is your brain creates scotomas. And scotomas in Greek means blind spots. It'll actually drop any information from your visual, auditory, or sensory perceptions, period, that don't line up with that habit or belief. If you think about it from a neurological perspective, from a brain perspective, beliefs are nothing more than neuronal patterns in the brain, neuronal circuitries in the brain that have been reinforced over and over again. And the more they're reinforced, the more a neuron is fired across the synaptic gaps of your DSPs, the easier it is for that firing threshold to happen. And that's what causes our ants. And if we remember what we talked about, ants are automatic negative thoughts. We have to stop the automatic negative thoughts by stopping them dead in their tracks and moving to an automatic positive thought, or APT. So with that said, on page 37, we talk about what beliefs affect. And they affect everything. They affect your self-esteem. They affect your relationships. They affect the amount of money you make. They affect your job performance. They affect your entire life. They affect everything that you believe to be true about yourself. Your self-esteem is nothing more than a bundle of your beliefs stacked one against each other. And for most of us, for most people, their beliefs are inaccurate. We are capable of achieving greatness with the power and the tools that our Creator gave us. We just need to take control of the brain, take control of our neural patterns, and create new neural patterns that are much more powerful than we have right now, about how much money we can make, about the business we can build, and certainly about how we feel about ourselves.
So habits aren't good or bad, but if you've got in your brain a $30,000 a year program for income, or 50 or 100 or 500 or 600, it's not good or bad. It's just the program that's in there. And what the program does is, since we've got about 11 million bits of information coming to us per second, it matches up 4 to 2,000 bits with the pattern that's already in here. It drops everything else from its consciousness. So even if $1 million idea came to you and you weren't wired to accept it, guess what you would do? Drop it. You wouldn't see it. You wouldn't resonate with it. Think about this. Take Donald Trump, give him $50, take away all of his money. How long do you think it would take him to be a multimillionaire again? Yeah, probably weeks. Take somebody who has $50, Give them millions. How long do you think it'll take them to get rid of it? 86% of people who win the lottery lose it. 86%. Why? Not because they're not intelligent, not because they're not wonderful, not because they're not loving or caring. It's because the internal map must match out with the outside world. If the outside world is any different, we will do everything in our nature to sabotage it. So one of the reasons I work so much on the inside first, and one of the reasons we're going to work on the inside, is we're going to create the image on the inside so that your brain goes to the outside to find what matches up with in here. Does that make sense? So we've got to work on this first, not there. It's not outside of you. Think of a neural pattern as a little highway in your brain. Just cells connecting. Okay? The more they're reinforced, it's kind of like paving a highway. The easier it is to drive over the highway. But the more they're reinforced, the more the neurotransmitters can go across. The neurotransmitters relate a message, can go across the synaptic gap, okay, and fire off automatically. So the threshold is reduced the more that it's reinforced. So if you've been told, okay, like most Americans or Canadians, or we've got people from Africa here, we've got people from all over the world. But if you think about our society, by the time we are about 17 years old, we've heard no, you can't, an average of 150,000 times. And guess how many times we've heard yes, you can? 5,000. That's average. So think about 150,000 times a neural patterns connected, or connections made in the brain. Okay, what do we say? The more the connections made, the easier it is for the threshold, the neurons and transmitters to fire automatically across that threshold, versus 5,000 times. What do you think we're going to do? It's automatic at this point. And so we have to understand, how do we learn to love the opposite, the automatic positive thoughts? I had to rewire myself from what my parents thought about money. What are the effects of the beliefs? It affects your entire life. I'll give an example. Think about having a value that family is the most important thing in the world to you. How many of you, family is the most important? A lot of you. So family is the most important. But what if your belief says that I must work like a workhorse 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to support that family? Will we have stress and conflict? Yeah, so it makes no difference what your values are until you get the beliefs straightened out. Understand? That's why I don't work on values first, because you can have values. Health could be your highest value. But you could have a belief that I don't have to eat well or exercise for me to be healthy. And would you be, in essence, killing yourself a little bit faster? Probably. So if we work on the belief first, the belief is like the root where everything else stems up from. We have other layers to work on, but let's go to the core first. If there's a lack of money in your life right now, money is not the problem. Money is the effect, or lack of money is the effect, or an abundance of money is an effect of the seed. The root is your beliefs.
Now, let's continue with the power of your conditioned mind. It is, as I said before, the most powerful part of you. Let's go through how this works on page 38 in your workbook, and I'll walk you through this. Let's assume that X represents the amount of money that you're making right now. It doesn't matter what it is. Let's say it's $50,000, $100,000, $20,000, or $500,000. It doesn't matter. What happens is if you introduce an idea into your non-conscious mind that resonates with the idea that's already in there, or the habit that's already in there, nothing happens. That's a very, very comfortable situation for you. And so you don't feel anything neurologically or physically. However, let's assume that you have a brand new idea of making more money. You want to go from making 30 to 100,000, from 100 to 500,000. Here's what happens. As long as that idea is just in your conscious mind, nothing happens, because you haven't impressed it into the part of your psyche, the part of your personality that really is the emotional side, the non-conscious. So as long as it's just an idea, it's not a big deal. As long as it's just an idea on paper, like in goal setting, it's not a big deal. But as soon as you start to impress, as soon as you start to really think about it, as soon as you start to really take action towards that new goal or new idea, your body goes into absolute shock. Doubt, fear, and anxiety sets in because the amygdala releases the neurotransmitters that cause you to have those feelings. Now, the feelings are normal, but you're not understanding what they are. And until we recondition the non-conscious side that's causing this to happen automatically without you even knowing it, you will continue to revert back into safety. even though that's not where you want to be. That's why goal setting on its own doesn't work. What we're talking about is a goal achieving process that really is going to take into effect everything about your brain and the way the universe operates and work synergistically with all of it to make sure that every dream you have and every goal you have becomes a reality as opposed to just a wish.
Every thought you have changes and alters 100 trillion cells in your body. You've got 100 trillion cells in your body, 200 different types of cells. Every single cell is altered with thought. The brain is what controls the entire cellular structure of the body. And so when you are thinking positive thoughts, you are emitting positive frequency, and guess what else you're attracting? Positive. What is the software? All it is, the software is just connections in the brain, neural patterns in the brain. Anytime we have an experience, a thought, a feeling, significant emotional experience, we get these neural pathways. Phobias, for example, if you think about what causes a phobia, if let's say we're walking down the street or a grassy area and a snake bites one of us, okay? What happens, the exact thing that happens in the brain is an enormous amount of pain is felt, signals sent to the brain releases an enormous amount of chemicals plus protein, almost like a nuclear explosion right at the synaptic gap. So instead of having a neural pathway that might look like this, we have an entire highway that's made instantaneously. So we will forever, there's a scientific term in the neuroscience field, brain research, called the neurons that fire together get wired together. Okay? So the neurons that fire together get wired together. So if you see a snake biting you, okay, at the same time you're feeling all this pain, the association at a very deep level, okay, will be ingrained almost forever unless we go back and atrophy that neural pathway and create new neural patterns of associations. There are 4 different levels that we go through of learning, and one of them is that we're unconsciously incompetent. That means we don't know that we don't know, and that's a prison that we don't even know we're in. If we're lucky, we move into the next phase that we become consciously incompetent. Now we know that we don't know. Hopefully, we move to the next level, and that's what we're doing here is we're consciously being competent. When you go to perfection or to mastering conscious competence, you go to what we call unconscious competence. That's where your non-conscious is doing everything for you without you thinking about it. Does that make sense? What we want to get to is unconscious competence. And that comes through doing the right things over and over and over again for a period of time until the non-conscious takes over that function. Think of when you learned how to ride a bike or brush your teeth or get dressed or drive a car. It was a conscious effort at first, correct? Then it moved to a non-conscious activity, and this wonderful thing called the non-conscious took over. That's the game I want to help all of you achieve, is let's become unconsciously competent.
The neural reconditioning process.
You know, life, like sports, is a very, very serious game. And the better we learn how to play the game of life, specifically the game of finances and making money and building our companies, the easier the game gets. Just like in professional sports, you and I have to practice. We have to rehearse. We have to stay on top of our game both mentally and physically. It's no difference. If you want to be at the top of your game, you've got to take time every day to practice your craft, to do what you do the best you can do it every single day. If you want game, set, and match in your life, practice every day, both mentally and physically, and watch your life and your business go right through the roof of success. Great. Now that you know how powerful your non-conscious mind is, and specifically your habits and your beliefs, it's time to take control and create what is that you truly want and what you really want and what you know you can achieve now. We're going to go through the creation and the manifestation process that is going to occur by applying the neural reconditioning process. Now, I know that may sound like a mouthful, but that's what we have to do. The first part of this is you have to choose. You have to be very, very specific. If we go back to the earlier parts of this program, the universe operates by exact precision and law, and so does your brain. And so what you have to do is you've got to choose the exact amount of income you want to make. It makes no difference what you've achieved in the past. What you've achieved in the past is based on your hard work and your belief system from before. We're going to upgrade that entire software in your brain. We're going to upgrade everything about your brain so that you can see and behave in ways that will help you achieve everything you want to achieve. So, what I want you to understand now is how the creative process works between you and the universe. Your job is to use your imagination, to use your creative process to think about what it is that you exactly want. How much money do you really want to make? How big of a company do you really want to build? You don't have to know the how yet. If you recall, the law of vibration attraction will bring to you everything you need if the seed is accurate and perfect. The seed is your DNA. That is the seed that you need in order to manifest what you want. You have to trust that the universe will bring that to you. There can't be any question in your mind that the universe operates by that exact law and precision. You can choose whatever it is that you want to choose and manifest it as fast as humanly possible by following this process.
So if you want a car, if you want a new house, if you want anything materialistic, okay, cut it out. Create a collage for yourself. Create the image first, and then see yourself in the image. Does that make sense? Because the more you see yourself in the image, the more your brain will try to find out there what you've created in here. Does that make sense to you? It's an inside game. One of the things that we did with the information I'm sharing with you is in 1998, I was called by a gentleman by the name of Len McCurdy. And Len had built mega companies. I think his last company had 5,500 employees. He had sold it to IBM and sat on their board. And I was retired at the time, and Len said to me, and Len knows all this information as well. And Len said to me, hey, come out of retirement, let's build this company. My son invented this technology that does virtual tours on the internet without any downloads or plugins. So instead of taking a black and white picture of a home or of cars or of hotel rooms, we could do a virtual tour, and it doesn't cost that much more. Are you interested? So as soon as I saw it, I said, oh my God, this is unbelievable technology. I'm game. He says, let's do something really unique. Let's do an IPO in 9 months. I don't know if any of you have been through an IPO in 9 months. It's tough enough to do them in 3 or 4 or 5 years. So we really started with a phenomenal team that we said, listen, let's teach you about your potential. Let's teach you about how the universe operates and how you operate within the universe. We taught them the creative process. We taught them about their conscious mind and non-conscious mind. And the company started in January, basically, of 1999. 9 months later, we did an IPO. We went from our initial group to 450 employees, did an IPO on NASDAQ, did a merger of equals of two companies that were worth $500 million at the time, took it to $2.5 billion in market cap at the time, all by using these principles. All by using these principles. And I'm not suggesting this to impress you, but to help you understand that we are not limited by anything other than our thinking and our belief systems of what's possible. And if you understand this information and apply it, it's unbelievable what you can achieve.
Now, the neural reconditioning process is really something that's so powerful, it'll help you get under this conscious mind and into the non-conscious mind as fast as we know possible. Some of the studies that were done at NASA that really helped us understand how this process worked included getting astronauts to put on these convex glasses. And what these convex glasses did is it flipped the astronauts' world upside down. And you may think NASA was crazy for doing this, but they were doing this for a reason. They wanted to see how long it took the astronaut's brain to rewire and flip the world's right side up. No matter what their bodies went through, they wanted to go through that pain and anguish to determine how long it took the brain to rewire itself. And here's what they found out. The first astronaut, his entire brain rewired itself as it relates to all the bodily functions and sight in about 26 days. So we know that it takes at least 26 to 30 days for this process to work. And that's how long it's going to take you. It's not going to take you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but you will have to do some of the work. Remember, it's information and application of information that's going to yield the results that you want. So let's continue and let's start the creative process for you right now.
How do you get your subconscious to believe that? Your subconscious will believe a lie if you tell it that long enough. It's true. It all starts out that way, but it's not that you're like, see, I know. Here's the voice that goes on in your mind. You say, I am now earning this, and the back of your mind says, no, you're not. Why are you lying to yourself? You've got this dialogue. You go, how'd they know? You know, and so there's a dialogue that goes on, but if you repeat it and 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 repeat it, you wear out the old conditioned mind that rationalizes, and all of a sudden, remember that critical point we talked about? There's one point where it just flips. And what happens is you start to see opportunities that line up with 500,000. You start to see your behavior changes. You start to see your choices change. This happens all unconsciously. It's all unconscious. The key is to understand, I know why I'm doing it. That was a great question. I know why I'm doing it, and I'm just going to take control of my mind and do it anyway.
So this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where you stop the learning part of this game and you start the application part of this game. If you don't do any of that, you will not achieve the results you want. Things will just be more of the same.
Number 1. Create a new vision.
So the first part of this equation in the neural reconditioning process is this. You have to be 100% clear on what it is that you really want to achieve. There is no ambiguity in the way the universe operates and no ambiguity with what the reticular activation system does or the psychocybernetic mechanism. So we have to give them very, very precise and clear instructions to remember, match up out there what the image is in here. So the first part of the neural reconditioning process is for you to choose a powerful financial vision for your life, which will include how much income you want to make and the net worth that you want to have.
Imagine if you had cancer, and some of you I know have, and some of you are challenged that way. Imagine, what would you do to get rid of it? Everything you could, right? So I look at negative beliefs or beliefs that aren't serving me as a cancer in my body, as I just want to eliminate it.
The next part is to really create the belief system, the affirmations, the declarations to support that new vision or belief.
Number 2. Choose powerful affirmations and declarations.
So the key to all of this is to now create a system, a process, to embed all the new beliefs that you need at a non-conscious level. And we're going to use a variety of tools for you to do that. The first is to create the affirmations and the declarations to support the new vision. That is what's going to give you the pillars that you need in order to make the vision a reality.
Number 3. Creating neural imprinting material.
All right, now next you're going to need to create some auditory, visual, and subliminal imprinting material to make sure that you reinforce all of the affirmations and declarations at a non-conscious level. This is going to be the pillars that you need to really ingrain this into the non-conscious mind. When you reinforce those for at least 30 days, they will take hold and they will become permanent, and that's what you really want.
What I use a lot of photographs, I use a lot of visualization, I use subliminals. I use affirmations that I hear with music, subliminals that I use underneath. I've got subliminal stuff on my screen in my computer. So I am doing what I create a conscious, creative bombardment of my subconscious.
Number 4. Develop emotional triggers.
A couple other things that we're going to do is, number 1, we're going to develop some emotional triggers for what we call the neural linking process.
Emotional triggers. What you want to start doing is having some resources for ourselves to tie past experiences we mentioned earlier to what we want to attach right now. So if we take, for example, a new belief that we want to acquire, what we'll do after we got the emotional triggers together is we'll create a belief that you want, an empowering belief, tied to the emotional trigger that already exists in your brain. Does that make sense? We just tie it in. And I'll give you an example. When I was 17, I received a scholarship to play basketball for Oregon State University before I had my car accident. But in one of the games, I played for the junior Canadian national team. In one of the games, I was a point guard. I was guarding a guy by the name of Dan Brodeur. This is like 20, 30 years ago. And he was 6'8", and I was 6'3" at the time. And I had a 48-point game, and I kept him to 16 points. And I remember consistently just the emotion of being able to just hold him back and scoring almost at will was one of the most emotional moments of my life, of just having that total flow. And so I can go back there at any moment. I go back to that feeling of how I felt so in control and so just dominant over this team, this guy, that I go back to that and then I attach a new belief that I want to instill. Does that make sense? So I'm using the emotion and the neural pathways that are already there. I'm saying, I'm a brilliant and savvy businessman. I think of that emotion. Boom. Brilliant and savvy businessman. I think of how I felt. So I'm associating an old experience from the past that's still very resonant in my mind.
Number 5. Daily reconditioning.
This is going to take you about 3 to 5 minutes in the morning, 3 to 5 minutes in the evening to do. So we're not talking about a whole bunch of time, but you are going to have to do it. The more time you give to this, the more ingrained it's going to become at the non-conscious level, and the faster this process happens for you.
And so I am consistently bombarding my subconscious. Anytime I want to achieve a new level of success, I have to recondition the mind. You just have to. Does that make sense to you? Because if you don't, all the other systems in the brain will just shut you out. No matter what your desires, habits are 10,000 times more powerful than desires. What I do is every morning, I'm usually up about 5 o'clock, the first thing that I do is I sit in my office, I do a quiet meditation first, for 20 to 30 minutes, and then I do a visualization. So I just play the mental movie. I take my laminated sheets, and if I'm listening to my auditory stuff, I'll read it as I'm listening to it. Does that make sense? Because I like to take a lot of action, I do everything. So meditation in the morning, followed by visualization. Listen to your affirmations when you're driving. Listen to the new beliefs that that you're impregnated into the subconscious mind. Have your subliminal software flashing on the screen of your computer. In the morning when you wake up, just when you're still a little bit groggy, when that filter hasn't set in yet between your conscious mind and your non-conscious mind, you do a little visualization of what it's like to have $50,000 coming into your bank every month. So you see yourself walk into your bank, and the banker's there to greet you, and is personalizing your visit with a handshake, say, wow, you're doing really well, and you walk back out your car in the new clothes that you've got, and you're doing nice things, for society, and you're contributing to the charitable events that you want, and you're doing great work with the money, and you're living the life that you want, you're traveling the way that you want, and you're eating the way that you want, and so on and so on and so on. It's a mental movie you're creating of already living there over and over and over and over again.
Number 6, visualization techniques.
We're going to show you how to do some visualization techniques using photographs, mental movies, guided imagery, real-life movies in your mind, and recorded and laminated affirmations. We'll use all of this as part of the neural reconditioning process, and you'll get to choose what works for you. But again, the whole process depends on you. It depends on you doing the work and really getting into the mind at a non-conscious level and retraining the brain, rewiring the brain for the success that you want to achieve.
Use photos, you see what the photos are. So photo representations of your body, your finances, the things you want to buy, the home, whatever it is. Why? Well, when we get into the eyes, I'll repeat this twice. 25% of our brain is used in visual processing. 25%. 2 eyeballs, 125 million receptors in each, accepting all the light rays that are coming through. And so it's a very, very powerful tool when we have photographs. We're visual human beings. Okay, so photographs are great. Mental movies. As I mentioned, if you don't have the car of your dreams or the stuff of your dreams, you create movies, either in your mind or you create it in fact and then just watch it. So go and get into the car that you like, take it for a spin, have somebody videotape you. And you watch the video over and over again. A home that you like, or a renovation that you like, or clothes that you like. Go and try them on. Take pictures. See, as soon as you start to see yourself already in that frame of mind over and over and over again, see, every truth starts out as a lie first, as far as our brain is concerned. So when we start out, okay, why not create the image first and then allow the reality to set in, or the physical manifestation to set in. But what we've been taught to do is, when you see it, you'll believe it. And I want you to turn the equation around. When you believe it, you'll see it. What we're doing with visualizations, the reason the visualizations are so powerful is because so much of the brain is involved in visual processing. But it's also the best way to get the neurons in the brain, what we call cells of recognition, to build up really fast, and the DSP connections to build up really fast. When we add this with meditations and we go into higher states of consciousness, gamma rays are produced in the brain, and that is really what we need for the neural connections.
Vision boards.
Many years ago, I created something for myself called a vision board or a goal board. And what I did was I cut out pictures from magazines of dream homes that I wanted, or cars that I wanted, or clothes, or anything that was materialistic like a watch or a vacation that I wanted to go on. And every morning after my meditation, I'd come into my office where I had these vision boards, and I'd look at the vision boards and I'd play a mental movie in my own mind I would see myself driving the car of my dreams and living in the home of my dreams. So what happened was, about 5 years after doing this every single day, I had moved to California and I bought this beautiful home that we renovated. In between the time that I moved from Indiana to California, my stuff was in storage for about 5 years. And so when I moved here to California and bought my dream home, I had all the furniture brought to our home in San Diego. And something very, very unique and kind of mysterious happened, but it really wasn't mysterious because I knew how the laws of the universe worked and I knew what was really happening. My son came into the office one day where the boxes were sitting from the old house, and he asked me what were in the boxes. And I said to him, I said, "Sweetheart," I said, "they're my vision boards." And being 5 years old at the time, he said, "Well, what is a vision board, Dad?" And I explained to him that when I wanted to achieve anything materialistic in my life, I set a vision of it on a board, and I would play a mental movie, and I'd play in that movie as the lead actor, living the life of my dreams. And so he still didn't understand, so I pulled out the boards, and I showed him a picture of a car, a little Mercedes sports car that I wanted to acquire, that I acquired, a nice watch that I wanted, that I had acquired. And then when we pulled out the second board, I was in shock. I didn't know what to think for a moment because a picture of the home that we are now living in was on that board. Now you need to understand, it wasn't a home like that. It was the home that I had picked out and put up on my board 5 years earlier. I hadn't seen that picture for over 5 years. Yet the movers brought the box, and surely I was living in that house. At that moment, I started to cry because I really, really understood how things manifest from the non-physical world to the physical world. And so with that said, let me show you my new vision board, and I'll also show you the picture of the old home that I put on that board that I'm living in right now. So let's take this away. If you see the pictures up here, this is really where I create my physical body and my physical life. So I have my plans and my goals and my vision for myself and my affirmations for myself. Everything that I'll teach you in this Culinary Success Home Study Program. This is what I do every day. So this is my physical self. And this here are some of the things that I'm working on now. And the way I like to work is I set myself up to win some pretty neat and big goals. And now my next purchase, I want to buy a nice jet, and I want to even build a nicer home than we have now. And I surround myself with things that I want to acquire, like watches, since I really like watches. And so anytime that I really achieve one of my goals, I buy myself one of these little toys as a gift to myself and as a reward for myself for having the discipline and the work ethic to really do what I need to do, both mentally and physically. A couple of the toys that I like, if you see down here on the bottom, is to fly a jet and to get a meditation room. And if you look over to the right a bit, what you'll see is what I call my achieved board. And so right in the top left corner there is one of the developments that we built in Telluride. We have a home there right on the mountain slope. And we have a picture of the White House with the pillars. And that is the picture that I initially cut out many years ago that I wanted to live in. And so that's my achieved board. That's there to remind me that no matter what I set my mind on, I can achieve it. And you and I have the ability to do whatever we choose, but we have to have the mental clarity. The reason the vision boards work is because it keeps you focused on what you want. And remember, we're creating cells of recognition and an internal map of reality first before we see it in the physical world. So I know firsthand that everything that I've been teaching you works. Everything that I'm sharing with you comes from my heart and comes from firsthand application. I hope this has been helpful for you because it's really been one of the keys to my success.
Meditation.
Let me share with you exactly what I do and how I meditate so that you can have an example for yourself as opposed to just trying to understand what to do. I find a quiet space somewhere in my home. For me specifically, it's right out here. And this is where I find my connection to the source. This is where I find my connection to our Creator. And a meditation that's really simple and easy to do, and you only want to do it to start off with maybe 5 or 6 minutes. Your mind is like a mental muscle. And so what you want to do is you want to start to practice. You want to start to exercise your mental muscle just as you would a bicep or your chest muscle. Every one of our muscles needs attention. And so here's what I do. You simply sit quietly and comfortably in a chair or on the floor, however you choose, and you hold your hands any way you like. The most important part of meditation is that you do what's comfortable for you. It doesn't have to be in a rigid stance. It doesn't have to be anything that's unusual or uncomfortable for you. So here's what we do. Just close your eyes and you just focus on the breath that's going in through your nostrils and then back out through your nostrils. And if you're like I am, and like many others, your mind will want to wander off. And what you'll want to do is you want to bring it back to the focus of your breath. And this is the early stages or the beginner stages of meditation. And later on we get into some deeper meditations, but for right now, just sit back, just watch yourself do this, and then you'll do it. Sit back and just close your eyes and just take a deep inhalation in through your nose. Let a few out through your mouth. Do 2 or 3 out through your mouth and in through your nose. So we go like this. And then after you've taken some breaths in and out through your nose and mouth, all you'll want to do is take inhalations in through your nose and back out through your nose with all of the focus right here at the base of your nostrils. And you'll do that for 5 or 6 or 7 minutes. And you'll see that your mind will wander off, but I want you to focus right back. In the quantum universe, observation and focus is critical. And by practicing to focus and by practicing to observe your breath, you quiet your mind down, which allows you to really enter the space of a different consciousness. And that is what I want you to do. And you practice that every day. And in about 2 weeks, you do about 15 minutes. And then you'll move to 20 minutes and 30 minutes. And what you'll notice is that your entire day changes. Everything seems to slow down. You seem to have time for everything. But most importantly, you feel such a connection that you feel one with that which created you. And so have fun practicing this. And remember, when your mind starts to wander away, always come back to the breath.
This completes disc number 2.